If you work in FP&A, you've probably experienced this. Your company tracks 50 different metrics, but only about 5 of them actually drive decisions. Now, I've spent over a decade in FP&A leadership roles at companies like P&G, Unilever and Squarespace, and I've seen countless finance teams drown in dashboards that are full of vanity metrics that nobody looks at. The problem isn't that companies don't have enough data. It's that they're spending too much time on the wrong data. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through my 6-step framework for deciding which metrics you should actually track no matter what industry you're in. Let's get into it. Step 1, start with the strategy. Before you can decide which metrics to track, you need to understand your company's strategy. What are you actually trying to win at? What's the strategic direction and where are you going? This means developing a broad understanding of the business, how the strategy translates into tactics, how those tactics get executed against action plans, and how you measure the effectiveness of those action plans. For example, if your company's strategy is to expand into a new market, you need to understand how that translates into opening physical locations, hiring local teams, and building brand awareness in that region. The metrics you track will be completely different than if your strategy was to improve profitability in your existing markets. By the way, if you want to see this entire framework that I'll go over in this video laid out in a simple one-pager you can reference at work, you can get that by clicking the first link in the description. Step 2, define success. Once you understand the strategy, you need to define what success looks like. Now, if it's a strategy that can never be achieved, it becomes really difficult to measure success. For example, outpacing their competition is usually an endless game of cat and mouse. Success becomes so vaguely defined that you can't really measure it. Ideally, the strategy has a clear endpoint, like entering a new market and achieving a market share of 5% by quickly opening up 18 new stores. Then it's easy to define what success looks like. Step 3, identify the drivers. This is the who and the what. You need to figure out which department, which business unit, which team, or even which individual leader needs to make this happen. The more narrowly you can define this, the more valuable your metrics will become to decision making. Then you have to define the business drivers. Those are the concrete activities you create the metrics for, so you can track if they were successful or not. What's important here is that P&L line items are not business drivers. It's not enough to say, I need to measure the success of our marketing investment, but rather a business driver would be, I need to measure the success of launching ads that primarily aim to raise brand awareness. Step 4, brainstorm ideal metrics. This is an important step that sometimes gets missed. You want to brainstorm the ideal metrics to assess the drivers without considering feasibility just yet. Don't dismiss potential new ways of looking at the business too soon without properly studying them. So sit down and make a list of all the KPIs and metrics you'd love to have in an ideal world to measure the effectiveness of the drivers you selected in the previous step. And at this stage, the key is to let ideas flow freely without judging them right away. When you start evaluating whether each metric is realistic or feasible too early in the process, it actually kills your creativity and you miss out on potentially great ideas. The famous singer Ed Sheeran has something to say about this. When Ed Sheeran sits down to write a new album, he writes 100 songs. And then he deletes all of them except the 20 that are truly exceptional. That's how much he values brainstorming. Step 5, consider data availability. When you're done with the brainstorming, you'll think about availability. You go through your list one by one and assess how easy is it to get the data. Consider data availability. Do I have the data sources already? Are the data sources up to date? Are they accurate? Do I have a single source of truth definition? And if not, how can we get there? Think about what needs to be true and what involvement from other teams you'd need. Which resources would I need to get the data behind this metric to a point where it's reliable? And then lastly, now that you understand the feasibility, you determine which of the ideal metrics are actually feasible to track. Step 6, select based on feasibility. Now that you understand the feasibility, you can narrow down your list and choose the metrics you want to see whether the strategy is successful or not. It's important that you do this final step together with the cross-functional team, since you might need help from IT or other functions to get the data you need. Let me walk you through a practical example using a fictitious company called Pair. They sell subscriptions to an on-demand streaming service to individuals and businesses. Understanding the strategy. Pair's investors get impatient about seeing profitability for the first time. It's one of those companies that for a long time hasn't been able to be cash flow positive. They were always saying, we need more growth to a certain point where we become profitable and stay profitable. Recently, there's been good news. Growth has accelerated, but the growth was driven by drastically ramping up marketing expenses, which can be a sign in the investor's eye that they are just buying the growth and the product market fit might not be there. So our new strategy is to find a way to increase sales without further increasing customer acquisition costs. Because we want to prove those doubtful investors wrong and say we can grow just on the basis of our product being a fantastic product for the market we're serving. Defining success. We say we want to increase sales by 20% compared to the previous year, but at the same time, we want to keep customer acquisition costs below 5% of sales. Identifying the drivers. We state clearly who and what needs to deliver. The website conversion rate has to go up. That will help get more sales without necessarily getting more expensive leads. Customer retention rates should be higher. That's another driver for getting more growth without spending more money on acquisition. Marketing needs to do a better job of being more efficient and reaching more potential customers, despite the fact that they're not getting more funding. One way to get there is to optimize the channel mix, meaning shifting funds from a low ROI channel, say display ads, to a better performing channel like YouTube ads. And the customer service team needs to step up their game in helping customers get onboarded with the product and really understanding how to use it and tracking user engagement so they can proactively address issues before someone decides to churn. Brainstorm ideal metrics. So now we brainstorm the ideal metrics. Some of them are pretty straightforward because they're linked directly with the associated business drivers like average order value and website conversion rate. They link with revenue. It's easy to connect them to the financial results. Customer retention rate is an important measure because it helps us determine to what extent the improvements we are making to the product help us in reducing churn. And then we also want to track customer acquisition costs because that's what investors asked us to keep flat. Customer satisfaction scores to see if we still have a good product market fit, even if we acquire customers differently. Determining feasibility. So now we look at feasibility. Average order value and website conversion rate are straightforward to track with existing systems. Customer retention rate and customer acquisition costs require some work. Finance decides to track these metrics, but these metrics require data integration, but we're confident we can connect their required systems. However, we're not sure how much time it takes to actually do this in Excel. So we decide to do a test to determine if it's worth it while we work on a permanent solution. Customer satisfaction score gets flagged by design and IT teams as they're too busy to do the time-consuming integration work, and the leadership team postponed implementing this until next year. Selecting based on feasibility. Now, here's how this process of selecting the metrics to track can take place in practice. There are often trade-offs that have to be made between getting the metrics with perfect visibility compared to the resources and the time people have available. If we go back to our list of ideal metrics, average order value, we have it, customer conversion rate, we have it. We could get customer retention rate and customer acquisition costs. It's just a bit more of a manual effort, and we don't get the customer satisfaction scores until next year. So does this mean we should just track 3 metrics without increasing marketing expenses? Would it be enough to call the strategy successful? Honestly, I'd say no. We really need customer retention rates and customer acquisition costs to make this work. Without those 2 metrics, it's almost impossible to know if we're actually achieving a strategy or just getting lucky. If I was leading the finance team, I'd tell them, look, I know calculating these in Excel is time-consuming and painful, but we have to do it. These metrics are too critical to wait 6 months for a perfect automated solution. So the bottom line is, Stop tracking everything and start tracking what changes behavior. Pick the vital few metrics that are accurate and lead to business decisions. Now, if you want a one-pager that summarizes this entire system so you can apply it at work and impress your coworkers with your analysis skills, just click the first link in the description below. It breaks down this framework with all the key steps in a format you can reference anytime. So grab that link, grab the one-pager for free, and if you want to learn the 5 ways you can save 8 hours or more per week as an FP&A professional, then watch this video next.